Hey boys and girls, what time is it? It's cooler time. So I'm Chris with Overclockers Club. I've already reviewed the H100i Pro here, the liquid cooler, great liquid cooler, and the A500, which is an air cooler. This sort of celebrates Corsair's jump back into the air cooler market after quite a few years of being out of it. But today, we've got the iCUE H150i RGB Pro XT, and the XT stands for extra tasty. No? Okay, it does not. Let's get this thing out of the box. And this is like Christmas. Opening all the new goodies. All right, so this is the latest in liquid coolers from Corsair. And there's a user guide. So it looks like it covers 3 different varieties of the cooler. And we have 3 fans. These are 120 millimeter fans here. And mounting brackets, mounting hardware. More hardware down here in the bottom. There are all the screws and fasteners. And there's the pump. And the radiator. And then this is your connection to your motherboard for the iCUE software interface. This, of course, is a 360 millimeter radiator. Get the bag off here so we can see what's going on with the pump. There we go. And you can see it comes, like a lot of these systems do, with the thermal paste already pre-applied, and then there's a protective plastic cover there to keep the thermal paste from being smeared and smudged around. So I will put that back on so that I don't damage it. And the interface here to the pump, there is a regular SATA power connector, and then there's a 3-pin, but it's actually a single wire. So this is usually like for your tachometer to send the pump speed information back to the motherboard. And then we have 3 of your connectors. They're 4-pin connectors for your fans. As far as mounting hardware goes, we get the usual Intel base there, base plate. You've got your AM3, AM4 for your AMD processors, and then actually, this is nice, if you have an AMD STR4, you get those brackets. The motherboard for my test system is an older Z87 system with a 4770K. I'll be cranking that up to 4.2 gigahertz. Temperature in the room is about 66 degrees Fahrenheit. And I crank the fan speeds all the way up to keep them moving as much air as possible. I'll use Prime 95 to stress the CPU to get the load on there and get the heat build up. I'll also be testing the H100i Pro cooler that I showed you earlier. I had actually run that on an AMD system. I forgot that I hadn't tested it on this system, so I'll actually be comparing those 2 coolers on this same system with a similar setup. Something to mention about these radiators here, as large and impressive as they are, and the frames are very robust, but always remember that the fins here are very fragile. It doesn't take much at all. You can bump it with your hand and mash those cooling fins over, and you got to get in there with a little screwdriver or a little piece of plastic and sort of straighten them out. And I've done that many times, so just be extra careful with the radiator. Now this pump here, a note about that is that it's really an upgraded version of the Pro Series pump that was first introduced with the Platinum series of coolers from Corsair. So this one can move liquid more efficiently. It's quieter, so it doesn't produce as much noise. And in combination with the ML series, or the Maglev Fans, we really get the best of everything to maximize your cooling potential. I just opened that little hardware bag there and dumped it out, and there's a lot going on there, so I need to sort through here and get this organized a little and make sure I have everything I need. There, that's not so bad. I sorted through everything, kind of got it organized, and it looks like everything is there for a variety of different system installations, but we're going with Intel today. And to make installation a little more smooth, they have this adhesive, so you peel this off, exposing some adhesive there, and that sticks to the back of the motherboard and sort of keeps this bracket in place so it doesn't fall off when you're trying to do your installation. And these little fasteners at the ends, you can see it's slotted so it can be shifted to the right position depending upon which socket you've got. And now it's time to get the pump on there. So I've got the last one to tighten down. Actually, this one's a little loose on the left. So get these all snug. That way we know that the pump is thoroughly engaged with the top of the CPU. And remember, this has the thermal paste already applied, and there's a little sticker on top here. If I can peel that off, just sort of protects that nice Corsair logo. All right, now, of course, these are the connections for the fans. And then also coming off of the pump is the power cable for the SATA, and this other lead here, it's a 3-pin plug, but remember earlier, this is just your tachometer basically telling the motherboard that the CPU or that the pump is running so that the CPU does not overheat. And the data cable here somewhere, oh, here it is. This is the data cable that connects to your USB socket on your motherboard, and the other end goes to the pump. So that's what the iCUE software uses to communicate with the pump. So we'll get that plugged in. So you can pick any USB socket that is open. Really doesn't matter which one. And then the other side here, and I don't have to be too particular about making the cable routing pretty, but it goes over here on this side of the pump. If I can find it, there we go. All right. Actually, there is one last thing. I've got to get these fans installed. And these are 4-pin sockets there, so they're PWM, which is pulse width modulation. These are the ML120 Maglev fans. They're good for 400 to about 2,000 RPMs. And the system actually runs, or is capable of running, in 0 RPM mode. So if you don't need to run the fans, if there's not enough heat there, then the fans will turn off. So that's what all these fasteners here are for. That's for your fan installation. And I will save you the pain of watching me install fans. It's not very exciting, so I'll be right back. So now I'm firing up the iCUE software for the first time. You can see the pump is all powered up. It is amazingly quiet. I can barely hear it. And the fans, of course, are not spinning very fast. So they are also very quiet. But of course, we haven't put any load on the system yet. So let's fire up the iCUE software here and get my bearings. Let's see. My guess is there may be a firmware update. So there's the iCUE firmware. Okay, here's the device. Limited. Okay, so let's see if it does a... No, it says it's running the latest version, so I don't have to do anything there to the firmware, so that's good. But when I clicked on the update button there for the iCUE software, it actually has a new rev, so I'll let that install. Now in the iCUE software I can look at the hardware status, so we can see all 3 fans there are running pretty low RPMs. and the pump is running at 2320 RPMs. Everything is in a balanced mode. And then we can come over here and look at the system temperature. We're running around 24°C. That's with no load and nothing going on. Now, a cool thing within the software here, over there under notifications, you can set up what temperature you want certain events or certain things to be triggered. So you can automatically bump the fans. It defaults to 70°C there, but you can change that. So you can set the fan speed to 100% in case there's an overheat condition. You can trigger all the LEDs so you get a visual indication. You can run a certain file. You can shut the PC down. So you have a little bit of emergency control there. All right, time to have some fun with the thermal camera. We'll look at the motherboard here real quick. We're stressing it at 4.2 gigahertz using Prime 95. And we're running close to 60 degrees Celsius there on the VRMs, which is the voltage regulation. Pump is very cool, and when we zoom out here a little bit, you can see the lines that go to the radiator. One of them will be a little warmer than the other, and that is carrying the hot coolant up to the radiator, while the other one is bringing the coolant that has been cooled back to the pump. But we'll notice when we look at the radiator, you can see there is a distinct warmer half. The bottom half of the radiator is warmer, and you can see the coolant coming in there is showing up around 33, 34 degrees Celsius. And then as we track along the bottom, we should see it get a little bit cooler. And we do. It gets a little cooler as we get to the other end. And then the coolant makes a U-turn and traces back the opposite direction, and we'll see it continue to get a little cooler still, where it finally exits the radiator. And the reason we see that bottom half of the radiator, or this section down here, warmer is because if you see right there, there's a little dimple, and there's actually a little baffle right there, and that keeps the water from going from the inlet here to the outlet. It can't just make this loop. You don't want it to do that. You want it to go in this side of the radiator, trace all the way down to the other end, come back, and exit here. So that's what the little baffle right here is for. And that's why you see that distinct temperature difference on the bottom section of the radiator. And everyone I've ever seen has been exactly that way. Now I've been running here for a while, and the temperature here seems to bounce around between 70, 73. It's holding pretty consistently. The iCUE is reporting 24.9 degrees Celsius. I'm assuming that is the pump temperature. And then our speeds haven't really changed much. They're less than 1,000 RPMs. The pump I've got set to the maximum 2,600 RPM. And this thing is whisper quiet. I mean, you just cannot hear anything going on. These fans are quiet. I can barely feel, I can feel a little warm air coming through there, but this is not the usual hurricane you hear blasting through the radiator. I'm really impressed with how cool and how quiet this thing is running. Again, we're running at 4.2 gigahertz. We've got Prime 95 stress testing the system, and the highest I've seen it creep up to is around 73. See, but here lately it's been holding around 71. Now, just for giggles there, I set the fan speed to the 0 RPM mode and set the pump to the quiet mode, which dropped the RPMs a bit there. And you can see here the fans are not moving. And the temp there, at least according to the motherboard software, is creeping up to around 79°C, 78. And then we can see the temp there that iCUE is reporting is also creeping up slowly. So I went ahead and bumped the emergency temperature to come on at 42. And as soon as it hit 42, the fans definitely cranked up to 100%. And you can hear them when they're running that fast. So I set everything back to 0 RPM mode. I reset the emergency triggers down there. This time I went ahead and set all the LEDs to turn red when it hits 40. The fans will kick on full speed at 42. They're not running right now. You can see the temperature is slowly creeping up. And I've got my decibel meter here, so with the fans not running, it's around 35, 36 decibels. And here in a moment, everything should break loose. And we're approaching 40, so we should see the LEDs all triggered. Yeah, there they go. So they triggered to red at 40. And at 42, the fans should all kick on. And we're at 41 now, so one more degree. And we'll just see what the fan noise sounds like. And there we go, we hit 42. And I went ahead and set everything back to extreme. And the fan speeds are coming down as the temperature is slowly drifting down also as things are cooling off. And again, even in extreme mode, these things are very quiet. So now it's time to take a look at the next cooler, which is the H100i Pro, and just see what sort of numbers we get with the same setup. And I just pulled the pump off there, so anyone who's curious to see the application of the factory applied thermal paste looks pretty nice. Looks very evenly distributed, and the mounting system seems to put nice even pressure on the pump base to the top of the CPU. Alright, so now I have the H100i Pro, which is a 240 millimeter radiator, installed. The pump's a little different, but it does use the same 120 millimeter ML fans. And I'm using the same overclock, 4.2 gigahertz, same Prime 95 to stress test it. And we can see here that the fans are set to extreme as well as the pump. Pump seems to be running at a little higher RPM as well as the fans. Our system temperature around 29.2, and we're holding around 73, 74 C. So let this run a little while and see how it looks. And I've been running this for a little while. Our RPMs are pretty stable there. Our temperature seems to bounce between 73 and 74. So we're really staying within a couple of degrees of the much larger cooler, which is the H150i RGB Pro XT. Now, the iCUE software is a lot of fun to play with, and if you're not familiar with it, after you install it, fire it up, and I would suggest at the bottom here of your main page, after you go to Home over here, click on this banner and it opens a very nice YouTube page that has all of these little tutorials on how to use the iCUE software, how to set it up with the different components, and how to get the most out of it. And that's where I would start. Walk through those and become more familiar with it. But anyway, it is a lot of fun to play with. It's very powerful, and if you've got a lot of iCUE compatible hardware components from Corsair, you can really have some fun. So big picture, between these two coolers, there's not a lot of difference. The pump on the H150i RGB Pro XT here is a little more efficient, but you get the same fans between these two different coolers. And performance, again, is within a degree or two of each other. Now, I am using an older 4770K, and Corsair did recommend that I use a more modern processor that cranks out more heat. This is all I have available at the moment. So if you have a more modern processor, or you do a hard overclock and you generate more heat, you probably will get a little better performance out of the larger cooler here. They do use the same fans between the two, and again, the pump's a little more efficient on the larger cooler. All right, I went ahead and popped the H150 back onto my test system. Pricing, the list price is $159, And I think that's a decent price for a cooler of this caliber. So what do you get for $159? You get the typical Corsair quality. You get the 3 ML120 fans, which seem to function quite well. They're very quiet. Even when they're cranked up, there's not a lot of fan noise. At least I wouldn't call it a lot of fan noise. Pump is quiet. Of course, once you have your system in a case, you really won't hear any pump noise at all, and you'll only hear fan noise when you have it cranked up to the absolute maximum. The mounting system is very easy to use. I like the way that the thermal paste is pre-applied. That saves a little bit of guesswork there. I like the braiding on the coolant lines here, and the fittings down there in the pump turn smoothly to allow for your lines to flex. And then the termination points here are also very nice. They seem to be robust. Fit and finish overall is, again, like I said, typical Corsair quality, which is just top-notch. And here's the testing data, as well as the specifications. Overall, I'm very happy with this cooler. I think it's a real beast of a cooler, so if you're looking for something on this scale, this is definitely one you want to check out. I'm going to give it the Overclockers Club Editor's Choice Award. And if it's too large of a cooler for your case, and you need something a little smaller, don't forget Corsair also has in their arsenal of coolers plenty that are in the 120, 240, 280 millimeter range. You might want to check those out also. And don't forget, Corsair also jumped back into the air cooler market after almost a 10-year hiatus with the A500. You can check out that review also at the Overclockers Club YouTube channel. So this is Chris with Overclockers Club. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.